So if you've been playing guitar for a while, you probably remember the jump from very beginning stages when you first started playing the guitar to becoming more of an intermediate player. And if you were like me and you were playing all the time, that jump from beginner to intermediate probably happened relatively quickly. But many of us stay stuck in that intermediate phase for much, much longer than we were in the beginner phase. In today's video, I'm going to talk about 5 things that I wish I knew as an intermediate guitar player that I think would have sped that process up, would have gotten me out of the sort of intermediate kind of understanding what I was doing to advanced player, someone that has a firm grasp on the guitar, the fretboard, understands what they're doing and can start to apply these ideas to play more musically. So we're going to cover those 5 things today. Now, before we jump in, I do want to point out that all 5 things that I'm going to talk about today actually come from a video course that I made called Fretboard Fundamentals Ultimate. You can find out more information about it in the description box down below. We'll talk more about it later. With all that out of the way, let's jump into the first point. Shell voicings. Now, you may not have heard of shell voicings, but I promise you this is a much more simple technique than what it sounds like. Simply, a shell voicing is a chord, a 3-note chord, where the chord does not have the 5th. Now, why is this the first thing? Why is this most important? Because I think to understand the concept of shell voicings, you have to understand a few sort of fundamental things to get you here, like triads, first and foremost, how they're built, where they come from, 7th chords, because a shell voicing is built off of a 7th chord, so major 7th, minor 7th, dominant 7th, diminished, so on and so forth. If you understand those two concepts, triads and 7th chords, and actually understand them, like where they come from, you know, pulling the intervals from the major scale and how those chords are built and how they're voiced, then you can get onto shell voicings. And shell voicings have a really practical application in the real world. So let me give you an example. The little intro thing I just played was kind of like a simple blues progression in A major. So I'm just playing like an A dominant 7th chord from the 6th string root here, and then a D7, like that voicing, and then E7, just a 1-4-5 in A major. Now I can make a shell voicing out of this dominant 7th chord just by finding where my 5th is, which is here, E, our 5th string 7th fret, and just not playing it. So if I played, or if I voiced it this way, that's a shell voicing. I have my root A, I have my flat 7, and then I have my major 3rd. So there, just with those 3 notes, I have an A dominant 7th chord. I don't need any more or any less than that to play an A dominant 7th. So why are shell voicings important? Because as guitar players, very rarely in the context of like a band or musical setting, do we need or should be playing the entire chord voicing. If I was actually jamming or playing with a band, like a trio, for example, I wouldn't play that sort of swing blues kind of thing like this. It's too much. There's way too much going on. Instead, I'm going to do something like this. There's a shell voicing of D7. I just have my root, my major 3rd, and my flat 7. Same voicing for E7. So I'm paring down what I'm playing, which is going to make the guitar fit in the mix better. I'm also changing how I'm voicing the chord on the fingerboard. So in this example with this dominant chord, it immediately opens me up to the minor pentatonic or the Mixolydian scale here for A. Now, I'm not going to try and show you all the different ways that you can voice shell chords or shell voicings. The beauty of this is that it's sort of a build your own chord voicing kind of thing. If you understand the concept, and like I said, you understand triads and 7th chords and the intervals that make up those chords, then you can take this idea of shell voicings and start experimenting. Now, before we go any further, I wanted to point out that all of the concepts that I'm talking about today are from a video course that I made called Fretboard Fundamentals Ultimate. This is my sort of flagship guitar course, the one-stop shop that I believe teaches you everything you need to know to have sort of a core foundational understanding of the the important parts of music theory and how they apply to the fretboard. Basically, by the time you're done with this course, I want you to have a firm grasp and understanding of the entire fretboard. The whole course is 35 video lessons split up into 4 segments that starts at the very beginning, the foundation of music theory and harmony, and gets more complex as we go, each lesson building on the one that came before it. But it's not just video lessons, there's also 8 bespoke backing tracks that I wrote and recorded specifically for this course that we actually use to apply the concepts in real time to real music. Each lesson is meticulously notated in PDF and Guitar Pro files, so you can follow along with what I'm teaching in each video lesson as we go. You're not just watching me on a screen, you can actually see what I'm doing in Guitar tab or standard notation, whatever you prefer. Now I've decided to put the course on sale for this video only. If you click the link in the description box down below, you'll get a special discount, which is only available through that link for a limited time. So if you want to find out more about what's included in Fretboard Fundamentals Ultimate and get that special discount, click the link down below. Back to the video. Okay, so now I want to take a step back. If you were confused at part 1 with shell voicings, when I started talking about triads and 7th chords, then part 2 is where you should start before that. Triad inversions. Now, as an intermediate guitar player, you might already know what a triad is. If you don't, it's really easy. It's just a 3-note chord. For example, C major, the C major voicing that we all learn is 3 notes from the C major scale. It's the root, 1, it's the 3rd, and the 5th. Anytime I play 1, 3, and 5 together, I get a major triad. But we can do more than just play major or minor triads. We can invert the triads. An inversion is simply where you take a note that's not the root note and put it on the bottom or the top, depending on how you think of it. Let me explain what I mean. If I take this C major here, this is what we call a root position C major, because my root note C is the lowest note of the chord voicing. But if I take it and play it here, where the 3rd E is my lowest note, that's still a C major triad because I'm still playing C, E, and G, but because my 3rd is the lowest note in the voicing, we call that a first inversion. Then if I had my 5th as the lowest note, in this case G, I would call that a second inversion. And yes, that technically is a C major chord, these 3 notes. I have G, C, and E, still a triad. Now, I played Wind Cries Mary at the top of this segment because A, that's probably my favorite Hendrix song of all time, but this is a perfect example of one of the most commonly used inversions for guitar, especially for like rock and soul and blues and rock adjacent stuff. And to play this, what I'm doing is I'm playing these triads here. These are 5th string root triads. These come from like the caged system, if you know anything about that. This is a E flat major triad, E major to F major triad. And then what Jimmy does at the second half of that riff is he plays the same 3 chords, but he inverts them to a first inversion. So instead of playing an F major like this, he's playing it like this. And you can do this anywhere. For example, if we take G major, right, that same voicing would be up here. Learning triads up and down the neck and their inversions, I think, is the fastest way to get you out of the cowboy chord rut. And as you're learning these inversions, actually try and find where the intervals are that you're playing in those chord shapes. And as you do this, you'll start to internalize kind of where these things exist on the fretboard. I think this is one of the best ways to learn the fingerboard as a guitar player. The third thing is being able to easily play rhythm and lead guitar together. This, I think, is probably the one thing that all of my favorite guitar players have in common. They are fantastic rhythm and lead players, and they can seamlessly blend the two together at any given moment, at the drop of a hat. So this chord progression I played at the beginning, it's very simple. Just E major, a 1 chord, C sharp minor, 6 chord in the key of E major, and then A major, the 4 chord, in the key of E major. So 1, 6, 4. One of the most common chord progressions or cadences of all time. Now, if you noticed, I was able to move up and down the neck and play both the chord voicings and melody lines or licks basically anywhere. And that's because I know my triads, I know my major and minor pentatonic scales, I know my modes, I know my Mixolydian mode, my Ionian mode, my Lydian mode, and no matter where I am on the fretboard, I can access any of that knowledge. So if I'm here in this open position, I have these chords, but then I also have access to the major scale, either the E major scale or the E major pentatonic scale, or even like the Mixolydian scale. So I know if I'm playing down here and I want to outline the chord with a melody, I can just go. And then that also allows me to move musically and seamlessly up the neck. So how would I move from these chords up to those chords, those triads? Well, I could play a line. There's my C sharp minor, my 6th chord, and its scale, minor pentatonic scale. And then I know my A major triad, the closest one is going to be here, an inversion. That's the first inversion of A major. And then I can get back to 1. And there's that inversion lick we just talked about in the previous example. I think the best way to first start to wrap your head around this is to learn songs. Now, being a huge Hendrix fan, I'm going to point out Little Wing. If you learn the intro to Little Wing, this is a perfect example of this combining lead and rhythm playing together. And when I say learn it, I don't mean just like look up the tab or a video lesson online and like sort of paint by numbers, learn where to put your fingers at the right spot. I mean actually learn the song, learn the chord progression, learn where those voicings are. When you learn Jimmy's part, be able to stop at any point and identify what chord voicing you're playing, what chord voicing you're outlining, and what scale that you might be using to outline that stuff. It might be difficult at first, but this is how you learn. This is how you connect the dots of taking the idea of music theory or music harmony and actually applying it to music by learning songs and sort of reverse engineering what that artist or what that player was doing. Number 4 is about the major modes. And this is kind of a complex one for me because this is maybe the thing that I struggled with the longest. I'm not going to go too deep into modes here in this video. If you want, the video course, the Fretboard Fundamentals course, has a whole section on the major modes and how I wish I would have been taught that concept early on, so check the course out. But effectively, to understand the modes, you have to understand the fact that every major key has a harmonized major scale. So for example, if we take the key of C major, every single one of those scale degrees has a chord associated with it. And with each one of those chords, we have a scale that goes with that chord. And this is where we get the 7 major modes. They're called Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. So there's basically 2 approaches to learning your major modes early on, the relative approach and the intervallic approach. Now, I was first taught the relative approach, and it didn't really work for me because I feel like it's making you do more work, even though it might seem simpler on the surface. Let me explain. So if we take D minor, for example, and I wanted to play D Dorian, right, which is a minor mode, a minor scale. The relative approach would tell me to think of D Dorian as the 2nd mode of C harmonized major, which means if I play the notes of a C major scale over a D minor chord, I will get D Dorian. Now that might sound different to you because I just started from the root note D, but D Dorian shares the exact same notes as C major. If I wanted to play E Phrygian, for example, it's the same thing. I would relate it back to the C major scale because E Phrygian is the 3rd mode of C major. Now, on its surface, you might think that, oh, that makes sense, right? Like I'm relating it back to a major scale, and you can absolutely learn it that way. For me, it was really confusing because I felt like I was having to do extra work. If I wanted to think about playing E flat Lydian, for example, even now I'm having trouble thinking about like what that would be. Whereas if you learn the intervallic approach or you learn the interval approach, I think it's much simpler. It may be more work and more practice in the front end when you're first learning it, but in the long run, I think this is a better approach. The interval approach, the intervallic approach, is basically learning the scales, learning E flat Lydian, and learning that scale in all the various positions all over the neck. But even more important than that, understanding the intervals. Like, what is a Lydian scale? Well, a Lydian scale is just a major scale with a raised or augmented fourth note, right? The Lydian sound comes from that right there, the fourth note being raised. We have that tritone in there. Instead of our major scale, we have... To me, modes should be thought of as a tool and not a piece of theory or an idea. Modes are a tool. They're an approach to get a specific sound or color or feel out of your music, or reverse engineering that feel. Why does a certain song have like a brooding, dark, sort of ominous energy? Well, because it might be in Phrygian. Because every mode has its own distinct character, you can listen to songs and start to identify what those modes and those colors are. And then when it comes to being creative and writing and making your own music, you can then pull from that knowledge and understand, well, I want this song to have a certain feel. I want this melody to have this color. I want it to be uplifting and beautiful, but melancholy. Maybe Lydian is your choice. And last but not least is understanding that it's not all about theory. See, about 15 years ago, I went to music school. And when I graduated and started playing out, I had this weird period of time where I felt like I was supposed to be using all of the knowledge and the theory that I had practiced and learned over the previous year. At 20, 21 years old, I thought that being a good musician or a good artist meant understanding and using a lot of music theory at every available opportunity. And I couldn't have been more wrong. That's because at the time I didn't really understand what music theory was. I thought it was this knowledge that made me inherently stronger as a musician, or it made me more creative. And that's just not true. Music theory is just a way to communicate ideas between one another. It's like speaking a language in that it's the vocabulary and the grammar. It's what we all agree on in terms of how to communicate ideas or tell a story. Or like we've talked about in this video, be able to reverse engineer things that you're hearing. You learn a song, you learn a solo. If you have some theory knowledge, then you can actually understand sort of the underlying structure as to what's going on there. And in my opinion, you can have a better shot at actually internalizing those ideas and being able to use them in the future. That's the power of music theory, but it doesn't make you inherently a better or more artistic or more creative musician. I like to think of it as, a great novelist, right? In order to write a great book or to tell a great story, you have to understand some basic communication skills. You have to know a little bit about the vocabulary and grammar, but you really don't have to have much knowledge beyond the basics to be able to communicate and tell a compelling story. On the other side of that, someone who knows and has a vast knowledge of vocabulary and grammar and all of the different ways to communicate things, that doesn't then make them a great storyteller. That doesn't give them a good story to tell. So you'll never hear me say that you have to learn music theory or understand it to be a good musician, because you just don't. To me, the best way to learn music is to play music. It's to learn songs. It's to learn your favorite songs, your favorite solos, learn from your favorite artists. And if you understand some foundational and some core knowledge of how the mechanics of music work and how they work on your instrument, it gives you a deeper understanding of your favorite music faster. You know why you like a certain thing. Why does this chord progression make me feel this way? Why does this melody over this chord work this way? If you understand just some basics, like literally just the basics like we've talked about, I think it's going to help you go much farther, much faster. So there you go. Those are 5 things that I wish I knew when I was an intermediate guitar player. If you want to dive deeper though, check out my video course, Fretboard Fundamentals Ultimate. Like I said, you can find out more information in the description box down below and get a special discount that's only available through this video and that link. That's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Rhett Shull, and I will see you very soon on the next one.